The deadly submarine disaster has forced the cancellation of the SA Navy Festival this weekend. Sadly, 3 Navy mariners died, 4 were injured after they were swept off by high waves in Kommetjie. We understand this was during a training exercise. An inquiry is expected to get underway once the survivors have recovered. I'm afraid there's been another incident, though, this involving 4 SANDF members who were killed in an accident earlier this week. Pikkie Greeff is the National Secretary at the South African National Defence Union. He joins us from Pretoria. Pikkie, good to have you back on eNCA. You and I haven't spoken for a while. We're going to talk about Lohatla, I think is how I say the area, in a couple of moments. I just want to start, if we don't mind, just with the submarine tragedy. The SANDF coming out and saying that all safety protocols were followed. I've spoken to those in the defence sector saying that actually isn't the case. What's your view?
Well, Gareth, at this stage, the union has no evidence that protocol was not followed. You know, the Navy is known for its professionalism in conducting operations, and I would be quite surprised to hear that protocols weren't in place. But I think that's something that the inquiry will have to look into. Of course, the inquiry will have to determine why that set of circumstances prevailed and what was the cause of it.
I mean, obviously, as the union, your first and primary focus will be the safety and the well-being of your union members. For those of us who aren't in the defence sector, Pikkie, I mean, there was high waves, very high winds. Was it a good time to do a training exercise like this? I understand there was a helicopter involved. The submarine was at surface level. For the untrained individual like me, it didn't seem like the best time to do that.
Yeah, I think what transpired, if one looks at the timeline in this whole incident, is that there was a gradual build-up of the weather during that exercise. So it's not something that happened suddenly. There was a gradual build-up, and it got a bit worse. And as far as we can establish, at one stage, the Naval Command called off the exercise, but then the incident, it kind of happened at the same time that's when the decision was taken. That's what we understand at this stage. Of course, safety is prominent to us as a union, but then, we also have to accept that in the military, circumstances are almost always dangerous when one goes operational.
There's been some criticism, fairly or unfairly, this is why I'm talking to you, Pikkie, levelled against the SANDF, that these are professional Navy. These are, I would imagine, very, very good swimmers. How did we lose 3 members of the Navy in open water?
I think it's a bit of a bugbear with me personally. No one, no matter how good a swimmer you are, will survive stormy seas. If you're out in the open ocean, I mean, this is not like a swim on the beach in the waves or something like that. This is in deep water ocean, and it's stormy waves. Those swells were 2 to 3 meters. Very, very few people would survive that kind of conditions for a long period or for even a few minutes. So, to question the swimming abilities of Navy members, that's really unfair. People have to go through very stringent tests to get into the Navy in the first place. And that includes a very, very tough swimming test. That argument is really unnecessary. No one will survive that kind of swell in the open seas.
What does the union now want from the Defence Force itself to prevent this from happening in the future? I imagine, apart from a probe and an investigation, lessons will need to be learned from this. What is the lesson from this for the union that hopefully we never, ever lose a Defence Force member again in training like this?
I think the lesson to learn here at this stage of the entire incident is that we would look forward to an open and transparent board of inquiry to set out the facts of what led to this incident. And in determining those facts, one can determine what factors one needs to take into account to prevent a reoccurrence. And that's the trademark of any good military, is to learn from, if perhaps mistakes were made, to learn from those mistakes, take corrective measures in order to keep your forces safe in future.
And now we know that the US Navy, I think it's a mini festival, has been called off for the weekend. It was meant to be this coming weekend. I'm sure it's out of respect to those that we lost. Pikkie, very quickly, I saw your statement earlier. So we're talking about the submarine tragedy. Unfortunately, though, there was another incident involving four individuals. This is in Lohatla. Just help me understand, what are we talking about here? What happened?
Well, Luatla is where the Combat Training Center of the Army is situated. There's an exercise currently going on that will be for 3 months, which is an operational exercise. And members from 8th Side Battalion in Uppington were being transferred to Luatla base for the exercise. And in the process, they were in a vehicle that towed another vehicle, and the vehicle being towed had a burst tire, and that caused both vehicles to roll. And unfortunately, 4 members were crushed under the front vehicle and died on the scene. That's basically 3 hours after this submarine incident. So that's 7 members that the SNDF lost tragically in one day.
What does the union want to have investigated in this? Because now there are going to be severe critics saying that now it's the unroadworthiness of the vehicle, for example, that has led to this. So what's the union's response, and what do you want the Defence Force to do about this one?
Well, again, the same, follow the Defence Act in this case, which we're sure the Defence Force is going to do a board of inquiry, establish the circumstances surrounding the incident, what led to it, and what can be done to prevent similar incidents in future.
The greatest tragedy is losing members of the Defence Force, and it's not even during a wartime. This is during training. Terribly tragic. Pikkie, thank you for making time this morning. Pikkie Greeff is the National Secretary at the South African National Defence Union. So that festival for the Navy that was meant to be done at the V&A waterfront, if I'm not mistaken, this coming weekend, has now been cancelled because of that tragedy on the submarine earlier this week.